Okay. Sweet. 3, 2, 1. Well, hey everyone, happy Monday. Alyssa Orange here alongside Mike Irwin. Time for Ask Mike. And, you know, we're wrapping up football, kind of really gearing up for basketball to take center stage, Mike. So excited to see what questions you have today. First and foremost, before we really get started, let's kind of give a COVID update.
Not a lot going on with COVID. The main thing is that it looks like all of the SEC games will end up getting played. Arkansas finished its schedule last week, played all 10 games, only had one hiccup. I think whatever games remain will be made up this weekend, the same weekend as the SEC championship game. So again, take your hat off to the SEC people. They were flexible. They worked hard. They figured out a way to make this happen. I don't know about basketball season, but we've gotten through football season. We've got the first vaccines began arriving in Arkansas this morning. I know that I looked on our own website and saw that Mercy Hospital in Rogers had already received theirs, so I assume Washington Regional is going to get some too. The first person vaccinated in the United States, I think, was a healthcare worker this morning in New York. So that has started. Now, it's going to be a while before athletes get it, and we don't try to talk about COVID in general terms, specifically how it affects college athletics. And as nearly as I've been able to determine the way they do this priority and how many, at least right now, they're estimating how quickly this vaccine gets distributed to other people other than the frontline workers and the nursing home people in nursing homes, looks like sometime maybe in March. Right now, it looks like that's when athletes may start getting it. Now, the issue is, this is interesting. What if athletes, some say they don't want it? Because we know that a lot of adults, especially people that are very conservative, have gotten on social media and said, hey, we're not taking it. So I don't know what athletes will do. And the issue becomes, could they be forced to do it? You know, you can't be on the team because we can't have you around these other athletes and have these disruptions. That's all got to be worked out. I'm just going to assume that most athletes will take it because they want to play, and this will stop the disruptions. So if we get good participation in a vaccine by March, then what that will likely mean is we're going to have spring football. Because you could even push it back if you still had some issues. Take the vaccine in March, and maybe in April, you go ahead and have spring football. It also probably will ensure that we're going to have an NCAA basketball tournament, which was canceled last year. The NCAA's already moved it into a bubble around Indianapolis. So if you've got the vaccine by then, you just further ensure that you're going to have that, and that's a huge revenue source. And college athletics, these schools across the country need that NCAA tournament money. The best news probably is how it would affect college baseball, because college baseball played a few games last year and the rest of the season was canceled. And that was a huge bummer here in Arkansas where Razorback fans love hog baseball. You get a vaccine by March, that's going to, if it get good participation and it's working the way they say it works, then we could probably see a full baseball season being played, and that would be good news. And then as you get the vaccine on into the summer to the rest of us, it may ensure that we have full crowds in the fall. I don't know about that. Again, a lot of that depends on participation, how many people want to take it.
Sure. We'll see what happens. All right. Our first question is from Pig in the Porky, who asks, what really happened with Boyd? Oh, that is a loaded question.
Well, it's difficult because he hasn't made a public statement. So unless he does, there's no way to know for sure. All I can do is relate to you what I was told, and this came third person or second person through a player, supposedly. But I'm not there when the player tells this person this, so I can't swear this is accurate. But what I was told was that, number one, he felt like toward the end of this season, or as he got toward the end of the season, he felt like, looking back on it, he'd made a rash decision when he decided to come back, an emotional decision. I mean, he was in good shape after last year, after the 2019 season. Why? Because he'd had, what, two 1,000-yard seasons and on two bad teams. The NFL's looking at that going, this guy's pretty good. He did that behind that crummy offensive line because he was the only thing Arkansas had for 2 years. He was in a really good position. New coaching staff comes in. They convince him, hey, stay with us. Things are going to get better. We're going to win games. Okay, he makes that decision. Then what happens? COVID hits. Then he finds out sometime in early fall, late summer, oh, we're going to have this schedule where we don't play all 12 games. That cuts down your number of rushing possibilities if you're looking at totals. Then we're eliminating all non-conference games. I don't care who you are, what running back you are. You get a lot of your stats from non-conference games. That's out the window. Now, you're going to play an all SEC schedule. You're going to play 2 games less, and the 2 teams that get added, 2 SEC teams that get added, just happen to be the best 2 teams in the East. What is that going to do? It's going to knock your rushing numbers down. So he knew going in when the season started it was going to be tough. Second game of the year, he gets an ankle injury. He's never really the same after that. It's better some weeks than others. But anybody that's ever had an ankle injury knows, especially if you're a running back, you're trying to work out and run on that ankle, it's not going to heal. And then he's having to put up with everybody getting on Twitter and talking about he's not running hard, what's wrong with him, he doesn't fit into the new offense, all this stuff. And he's sitting there thinking, I'm not full speed. I may look like it, but I'm not. I don't cut the way I did. He keeps thinking it'll get better, and finally toward the end he gets told, with this ankle injury, you're better off just resting it, because if you keep playing and if Arkansas goes to a bowl game and you keep working out and playing all the way through the end of December, you might end up with still having a problem and you're not full speed when these NFL workouts start.
Sure.
So he made the decision. The big question is, why did he handle the way it did? I don't know.
Well, I was going to ask if that's the case with the injury, and that makes 100% sense, like that's totally liable. Why not just be injured but stay with your team as a team captain?
That's the part that's not explained, the why he just cleaned his locker out and didn't explain it to anybody. Now, maybe he did. We all know that Sam Pittman is not going to tell us these details. He doesn't believe in sharing that kind of stuff, and he may not feel comfortable doing that. So there could be an explanation there. He might have gone to Sam Pittman and said, here's why I'm leaving. I do believe if he had, though, that would have been said, and it hasn't been said. So I can only speculate here, but I think maybe he was so upset with himself saying, why did I allow myself to be talked into this? This is the problem we have every year when players opt out and go early and everybody gets mad at them. Oh, why did he do that? He should have come back and helped the team. Well, look what happens. You try to come back and help the team and then everything goes wrong, and now you've damaged your own future in pro football. So I certainly don't blame him. If what I'm told happened, I don't blame him.
Yeah. All right. Bolo's old lady wants to know, are we expecting to lose any coaches?
Well, Bolo, I guess I'll address your wife too. I don't think so. We haven't heard anything. You know, there was immediate speculation, oh, the Vanderbilt job, Odom's going there, Briles is going there. Well, they didn't. So we know that. I don't think either one of those guys are going to go take a coordinator's job somewhere else. So the only way they would leave is if they got a head coaching job, and I don't see that there are jobs out there that they would get right now. So I think this staff will be intact at least through next year. I don't know of any assistant. The only thing you could even speculate on is Scott Fountain, the special teams coach, because they had such a bad year with special teams. There are people speculating, well, he's just going to get rid of him. Well, they're good friends. Sam Pittman has told us over and over again he had a really good reputation. It does sound kind of crazy to say, well, he was one of the best special teams coaches in America when he was at Georgia, but he suddenly, went nuts when he got here and couldn't coach anymore? What the people I talk to say is they don't have any depth on this football team, that there are pieces in place, but there are gaps. And Pittman didn't want to stick a lot of these really good players on special teams because he needed them in other areas. And what they're trying to do now is build depth, get better players so that they can stick people on special teams, and the special teams will get better. That's the only guy that could leave, and I don't think he's going to leave. I don't think Arkansas has got the money to fire a coordinator, because coordinators get 2-year contracts. So you fired him, you'd have to pay him next year not to coach. I don't think they've got that kind of money, so I don't think anybody's leaving.
I don't don't think that we've been through a football season since I've been here where there hasn't been at least one coach leave. So
yeah, it'll be
we'll see.
interesting.
We'll see what happens. Pork Soda wants to know, do you think the Ladybacks can make some noise in the 2021 tournament, Mike?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I haven't looked at if the rankings are out yet today.
They moved up to 12, went to 13 to 12.
Okay, so they're 12th, knocking on the door of the top 10, have beaten the number 4 team in the country, defending national champions, off to a great start. They handle the UCA game. These in-state rivalry games. Everybody's worried about that. The Arkansas men played UCA and I mean really struggled. But struggled initially, and the Arkansas women just drilled them. This team is better than a year ago. They still do all the things they always did: shoot the three, good running team, make layups, very quick. They're bigger now. They're still probably not as big as he wants them to be, but they rebound better and they've got a better inside game. They're just improved over a year ago. So if you're close to being top 10, which I think they are, I think that's legitimate, then you can expect to win 2 NCAA tournament games. I mean, you never know for sure, but I don't think they're going one and done in the tournament. Sure, and we don't really know what the women are going to look like right now because that format's so different than the men's where they host. That's right. They host teams, and so they aren't in a bubble quite yet. That was only for the men. So the women could easily end up
host
playing on campus, and that would help you win games too, especially if you got 2. I don't know how many you can get at home, but I think you host until I think the Elite 8 or Final 4. So it's a pretty good run. So. All right, Peacock asks, how high of an extra hurdle do you see for a Razorback assistant coach to win the Broyles Award or a Razorback walk-on to win the Burlsworth Award? Well, it's never happened, and I think there's a reason why that is true, because the award originated here, both of them did, and they're given out here. So you don't want the appearance of homerism. I mean, if every 2 or 3 years a Razorback former walk-on won the Burlsworth Award, people would start looking at that like, what kind of award is that? If every 3 or 4 years an Arkansas assistant coach won the Broyles Award, people are like, that's a dumb award. You know, it goes to Arkansas too often. So I think that you have an extra hurdle to clear if you are an Arkansas walk-on that's deserving, or if you are an assistant coach. Now, Grant Morgan has been nominated, so he's in there for the Broyles Award, and Barry Odom is in there for the Broyles Award. The Burlsworth Award. There you go. And the Broyles Award. Yeah. So we'll see if one of I don't think Odom's got a shot, probably because the way the defense lost. Arkansas lost 4 straight games, and the defense, especially in that Missouri game, just went way downhill. So I don't think he'll win it, but I think Morgan has a shot. He should. I mean, his season was absolutely amazing, and he is a former walk-on, so we'll see. Do you think, you talk about homerism, maybe they've built enough time now to where they've shown we aren't homers, but if a Razorback is deserving, we can't turn a blind eye. I'm not familiar with all the walk-ons around the country, but it'd be hard to find somebody's former walk-on's had a better year than he has. He's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Jumpany wants to know who runs the HogStats Twitter page and website. That guy is awesome. Yeah. I got caught off guard here. Let me look it up. Oh, sorry. Can you read down there? It says that his name is Justin Glore, and he has his own website, built the databases, used it from scratch. Yeah. I didn't know his name. I see him all the time. Yeah, we see him all the time, and we've done some interviews with him, but man, he's smart. Yeah, he actually went out on his own and created that database over a period of time with research. And now the U of A uses it because it's better than anything they've got. It's better than the media guide they give out. It's better than anything they've got about their own program, the various sports. And that's not unusual. Jim Borden, who started doing video archives back in the late 70s, early 80s. For football. We all know this in the media. If there's a game video or something you need of a certain play in a certain game, you can't find it on YouTube, he's probably got it because he took the film, and this is how this happened. Barnhill used to flood sometimes in the storage area that they had, and that's where they had a lot of the film, and they had a lot of it on the floor, and it was in these metal cans. And he noticed that there's water in there. He doesn't want this film to deteriorate, so he went over to the Broyles Center and said, hey, can I take this stuff and put it where my office is and create an archive. And they went, yeah, more power to you. So he did that, got all that film converted to video, and then started saving video. And there's just some amazing stuff in there. They've got color film from 1946, an Arkansas-Texas game, where Clyde Smackover Scott does all this stuff against Texas. So some of that stuff is amazing, and that's a guy that kind of created an archive on his own, and this guy has created a stat database that's just, he's got stats out the wazoo.
Yeah, it's incredible.
For a stat person, it's heaven.
Oh, absolutely. All right, CalHog32 wonders, will we ever beat A&M or Missouri again? So tired of losing to these overrated programs. Well, I think
obviously,
you shouldn't call them overrated.
Well, that's the feeling that the fans have, because they really believe the reason they're winning these games over and over is because Arkansas has been bad. Not that those teams are really good, especially Missouri. You and I kind of disagree on this a little bit, I know. Let me just say, first of all, yes, the streaks will end. We know that. We don't know when. I would caution everybody to distinguish between A&M and Missouri. Because there's no comparison in how Razorback fans feel about those two teams. Now, look, here's the thing. This is my belief. Missouri comes into the SEC with no natural rival. And Arkansas went through that too. So they try to find one. And right off the bat, the SEC office says, Arkansas is your rival. They border state. And they went great. They embraced it. Arkansas fans went, we don't like them. Go away.
Yeah, it's got a play on words with Kansas, who was the rival in the Big Ten, and it all worked out for them.
And then what's happened is Missouri's players, a lot of their fans, they're trying to push this. They're pushing buttons. They're popping off. They're trying to make you mad.
Oh, yeah, they're kind of brutal.
And I think it's made the players mad, but it hasn't made the fans mad because they just don't care. I really don't. Some of them do, but the large majority of fans just want to beat them and shut them up. But they'd still rather beat Ole Miss or LSU or A&M, the old Southwest Conference rival, or Auburn. Those are the big teams Arkansas fans. So the streak will end, but don't confuse that with some sort of weird rivalry. The rivalry is real, though.
Yeah. But you've lost to them 5 times in a row now. You should still care.
Yeah, you can care about beating them, but it doesn't make them, you as a fan. I'm distinguishing a difference between players and fans. But even in that game that happened this year, you know what happened? Arkansas had a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter and had all the momentum, and they just relaxed. And Missouri went, we're not losing to these clowns. We always beat them. And it players. So I don't know how you get Arkansas players mad enough to say we're beating them, but you're not going to make the fans mad. Some of them are.
I feel like with fans, okay, you throw the word rivalry out the window. Missouri should just piss you off. Like Missouri should, they're the little brother who won't go away, and now they've beaten you a few times, and now they really won't go away, and you should just be pissed off.
Well, okay, so beat them, but then go.
And that's fine, but you got to beat them first. With some teams opting out of bowl games, such as Boston College, do you believe the SEC will leave that decision up to each school? Getting the extra practice time would be important for the Hogs with continued development.
Well, of course, the SEC will give you that option, and Arkansas has already said, Sam Pittman's already said, we're playing in a bowl game. He's told his players that. He's on board with it. They're on board with it. There's different explanations you get. His deal is obvious. He wants the extra bowl workouts. He kind of considers it a mini spring football in December, which they didn't get last year, so they're getting a little bit of that back for further future development of younger players, guys like those D linemen that had to play against LSU that weren't ready. Develop guys like that, continue to work with the quarterbacks, situations that will be important next year. But the players have said, we want to play. You know, we don't want to end the season on the Alabama loss. And then I think you believe, and I agree with this, that there's money involved. You get extra money for playing in a bowl game, so why wouldn't you do it? It's not going to be a conventional trip. You're probably going to go in there the day before the game, stay in a motel, get up the next workout, get up the next day and play and go home. So it's not like a traditional
whole week long.
And there probably won't be a lot of traveling on the part of fans. It's a TV thing, but it'll be okay. It's an extra thing that'll pop up.
Extra game, extra practices, extra money. Nothing wrong about any of those things. All right. Stu says, why don't we just drop the pretense that what we are playing is football? Let's just get rid of the pads and helmets and call it what it really is, i.e. flag football. These targeting calls are ridiculous and getting way out of hand.
There's nothing wrong with the rule itself. The
Yeah.
problem is in the interpretation. Now, look, I don't want to get too specific, but targeting can cause, and that is helmet-to-helmet contact in a spearing motion on the part of the tackler, not they keep talking about the helpless ball carrier. I've seen very few situations in which you're defenseless. The problem is with the helmet ramming into somebody else. It doesn't have to be their helmet either. It could be in their shoulder pads or anywhere. You get a compression fracture. And so that kind of tackling should be discouraged. The problem is that it's being interpreted as any kind of contact kind of above the shoulders. If you're trying to steer yourself away from a ball carrier and you hit him with your forearm or your shoulder pads or your ribs or anything like that, all of a sudden you get hit with targeting.
Yeah.
And you weren't really targeting that individual, you were trying to avoid it. I just think that if they go back and re-examine the rule and have it specifically refer to the way the tackling took place, leading with your helmet, spearing with your helmet, head down, that's the dangerous part.
Yeah. All right, Said76 wants to know, why is it so hard for Arkansas to recruit SEC quality depth across the board? This has been an issue for what seems like forever.
Well, part of it is how competitive the SEC is. We look at Arkansas this year. I think they're top 25 in recruiting, yet they're in the bottom half of the SEC, 7th, 8th, something like that. So even if you're doing pretty well, you're not doing pretty well within your own conference. The problem of not getting it across the board is just, there are very few schools that do that. Alabama does, maybe schools like Ohio State, Georgia. Some of the schools like Florida that recruit very well every year, they don't maybe have the gaps that other schools have. But when you're out there trying to recruit, it's not unusual for an Arkansas or a lot of schools like Arkansas. Okay, we needed defensive tackles and tight ends. We got the tight end we wanted, but we didn't get the defensive tackle. Or we came up short in the secondary, or we didn't have this, or we didn't do that. So you're always going to have gaps like that. The only answer to that is your recruiting has to get a whole lot better, where you just don't have misses like that.
Yeah, and it's just hard across the board for everybody.
A lot of schools have that problem.
And winning helps.
Yep, it does.
Austin Hog fan asks, so what does the bowl picture look like? Will Franks play or opt out to work for the NFL, as I assume he is not coming back next year?
Yeah, we don't think he's coming back, but there's been nothing to suggest that he wouldn't play in the bowl game. They've got a week off now, so he can rest those ribs, and I think he's got a problem with his wrist. I think they felt like he may have, I think we saw him try to dive forward for a first down, might have landed on those ribs again, and that's when he came out. So he might have caused a problem there in the Alabama game. He looks like to me a guy that always wants to play. He came back in after K.J. Jefferson had that knee injury, so they were getting Jack Lindsey ready to go. So I think this guy wants to play. So I would be very surprised if he doesn't probably start in the bowl game.
From everything we've heard about Felipe Franks and just the way that he is as a player, he came to Arkansas to help a program. I just don't see him saying, okay, peace out. That's just kind of the tone that I get from everything that we've heard about him and from him. So we'll see. All right, we'll end on some basketball questions. Hogger 55 says, after seeing Vanover knock down a couple threes, one from very deep, it's hard to think he doesn't head to the draft ASAP. What do you think?
Well, it's always possible. It depends on what kind of year he had. But here's what I know about Connor Vanover. He's an Arkansas kid, always wanted to play here. Didn't look like he was going to get his shot. Mike Anderson felt like he was just a really tall three-point shooter and couldn't play didn't have the speed to play Arkansas's defense. So they didn't really recruit him. He went out to California, and then he gets his chance to come back, and I think he's just loving it.
Yeah.
And so it would not shock me to see him stay here through his senior year. Here's the thing about the NBA. If he continues to get bigger, and he will, stronger, he will go from this toothpick guy to somebody that's 7'3" and legitimate. He gets up to 270, 280, somewhere in there. He's a legitimate NBA big man with defensive skills, shot blocking skills, skills inside, can catch the ball inside and then dish it off or score himself. And so and then you throw in the three-point shooting, I think then he would be completely developed and might be a mid-first rounder. I mean, we'll have to see how he develops, but I just think he may stay.
Yeah. I think he needs a few years to develop also. Get bigger, I think.
Right.
If you're bigger and then a little bit better around the rim. All right, we're worried that our week schedule isn't going to prepare us for the conference schedule. That all of our freshmen are not playing enough, that we don't have a true alpha, that the sky is falling. Me and my household, we won't worry there until there's a reason.
Well, there's a lot of that going around.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of people complaining about those things and other things. Here's what I know about this team based on watching them.
Yeah.
It's loaded with players. 7, 8, 9 guys can really play. Now, they're not all consistent every night. The big problem that Eric Musselman had is getting all those guys to mesh, and sometimes you get a group on the floor that's not meshing, all of a sudden they're not scoring. They can do a lot of different things. I was watching one game and they don't have an inside game. It's just three-point shooting, drive, try to make a layup one-on-one or whatever. Then this UCA game, they're getting all kinds of assists. I think they've got 2 tall point guards that can run the point but can also score, so that's good. They've got these 2 grad transfers that both now have 1,000 points in their career. Who wouldn't want to have that? That's experience. But then they've got all these young players that are only going to get better as the season goes along. So I just think they've got a lot of components there. And I think this is going to be a good team. They just look much better to me than they did a year ago. We'll have to wait until conference play comes along to see these things, but I wouldn't worry about it till it happens.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, yes, it looks worrisome on paper that you haven't played a Power 5 or a big name school yet in non-conference, but you can't really make that comparison until you see them against SEC teams and then say, okay, maybe it's because they didn't. But you can't do that now because we haven't seen them. So, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to, I'm going to make an announcement here. We're going to put Ask Mike on hiatus through the rest of December. Come back on January the 4th. At that time, we'll be prepared to answer questions about the bowl game, what happened in the bowl game, what happened as conference play starts, but it'll have started by then. Hopefully some baseball questions because we'll be getting close to baseball season. So we'll do all of that, but this is kind of a lull period with football, and we're playing some of these non-conference games right now. So we're gonna put this on hold till January 4th, and then we'll be back with Ask Mike again.
And Mike has gifted us with all of his answers all year. We give him a gift of taking a few weeks off.
That's right.
All right, Mike, thanks so much. That's going to do it for Ask Mike. We will see you in the new year.